Okay, I think we're ready to, as they say, rock. So, some guys I met in the park. So here we are in the Magic Morning Wood.
Hey, wood.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm trying to sex it up a bit. Is this
yeah.
actually running? Oh yeah, good. Haven't missed any of the
Okay.
gold nuggets this
Nice.
far. So we're still on our run of one of us chooses a film and the other one chooses a retort film or a companion piece.
A reaction.
Yeah. And this time it was Ron's turn to go first. So Ron, tell us about what you chose.
So I chose the. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to get out my.
1996.
1996. Thank you, 1996. Where is
US Canadian co-production.
Yes, you take it away. I have to
Okay.
check something.
Ron
Okay.
chose Kids in the Hall, Brain Candy.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was the one. Thank you.
You do remember? You have watched.
Yeah,
it,
sorry, I
right?
was just looking for my phone so I could bring up the specs and
Okay.
stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, Ron's all trendy and modern and uses digital. I have old school paper and ink.
Yes, next to his old school, new school digital. Anyway, yes. So the Canadian sketch comedy group Kids in the Hall made a movie in 1996 called Brain Candy.
Right.
Brain Candy, and so I chose this because I had heard one of the Kids in the Hall on another podcast doing a long form interview, and it sort of sparked my nostalgia for the Kids in the Hall and of my youth. I was never super big into the show. I did watch the show occasionally, but I wasn't like a huge fan. I was more of an SNL fan. But they definitely have a specific style of comedy that's sort of and a Canadian flavor to them. There's sort of like a there's a kind of a thing with Canadians, which you may or may not know, which we have a bit of a chip on our shoulder, and Canadians generally get very, when we have someone or something that we like, we kind of protect them and we revere them like a lot, just because we like to. It's almost like we make them almost symbolic of us, because it's such a.
Do you mean something specifically Canadian or anything?
Yes, well, for example, before I get the examples, the idea is that, of course, Canada is a very new country, and because we're so close to America, which is very, overwhelming and strong culture, and also we're kind of connected to the British, we're ruled by the Crown and stuff like that. So we sort of have a mishmash of American and British culture, and it's sort of Canadian mindset
And the French.
And the French as well, right? So, in certain parts of Canada, and so it's a Canadian mindset to sort of have a chip on our shoulder to really want to have our own. What does it mean to be a Canadian, or to have our own sort of Canadian, national identity?
I wasn't aware of this complex.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, especially having the big brother down south, who's kind of pushing us around and laughing at us and making fun of us. It's sort of very important to us to have our sort of icons that are homegrown. That sort of speak for us and speak about us, or speak and speak to us.
Alternative to the more well-known North American whatever the thing may be.
Exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kids in the Hall are the answer to, also Kids in the Hall and SCTV being the Canadian answers to SNL and other things like that. Just as, for example, we have a Canadian band, for example, the Tragically Hip, which is a Canadian band that became like almost
on this soundtrack?
They were all shown on the soundtrack, which is also why I mentioned it, because it's really just a mishmash of just Canadian cultural identity put into one sort of hour and a half package.
See, it's interesting that
the only thing missing was Tim Hortons Donuts, which is
okay. It's interesting that you would say that, because if you hadn't brought that up, I don't think that actually would ever have occurred to me.
I don't think you get that from watching the movie.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just saying that's why I sort of chose this movie, because there are elements of that, but definitely the Kids in the Hall, even though I was not a huge fan of their comedy specifically, I'm almost sort of like obligated by my nationality to enjoy them and to like them
Right.
and to appreciate them as
Right,
well, right?
right.
So I chose it because
protect them,
preserve
Right,
them, exactly.
right, right.
And so
It's interesting. You have chosen a number of Canadian films.
Yes, I have.
Actually.
And I guess growing up, there's also a lot of Canadian laws where you have to. We have it's called the CRTC, where they have certain laws where like radio play and TV have to have a certain amount of Canadian content.
Right.
And so I think just growing up, I was sort of inundated and exposed to a lot of Canadian homegrown content. So it sort of shaped my taste a lot because I was sort of forced to watch it because there was nothing else to watch.
It's interesting that you bring that up now that we're on this tangent as well, though, because I'm not so sure if it's still to this day, but I definitely remember watching a lot of direct-to-video and direct-to-cable kind of shit movies through the 90s and the early aughts. Yeah. A lot of them, which people would have assumed would have been American, were actually Canadian, or at the very least shot in Canada, right? Yeah. And it's funny that you mention that because I don't remember a lot of them. It's almost the opposite of what you're saying. It's almost as if they went out of their way to seem just vaguely North American rather than putting a strong Canadian, unless that was too subtle for me or something like that. Right. But there were so many of those, like direct-to-video action movies and stuff like that, or kind of science fiction things, and it wouldn't occur to you until at the end of the credit roll it said made in Canada, Canadian Film Institute, or shot in Toronto, or whatever.
Well, I don't know if necessarily they're putting the national identity in your face as a viewer.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't.
So, and I don't think it was part of it. I think the point is that it's sort of like our well kept secret. Like, we have these people; they're born and raised here, and they're really, really good at what it is that they do. So they're ours, and we don't really want. And it's okay if we don't share them with people, but we're sort of almost. It's almost taboo or like heresy to actually speak badly about them because they're a part of they're almost a representation of our culture, right? So
I suppose maybe some of the things I'm talking about as well, there might actually be in another camp, like these are our things that we're, and then we also make these other.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
they're actually American.
We have things like Tragically Hip, we're really super proud of, and really it's part of her. And then you have things like Justin Bieber, who everyone wants to pretend that he's not actually Canadian. Right?
Is he Canadian?
Yeah, he is. So,
okay.
So I mean, there's both ends of the spectrum, I guess. Right. Kind of thing, right. So, but yeah. So anyway, I had heard one of the kids in the hall.
Which one? Just to fill viewers, listeners, even, you could look at your YouTube screen, but you're not going to see much. Yeah. The original show ran 88 to 94, which was earlier than I expected looking it up. But for some reason, I had it as more of a 90s phenomenon.
I mean, they definitely have a 90s feel to them, and I think they kind of hit their stride in the 90s.
Right, and I think that's when it might have turned up on British television. Sure. I think it had to wait.
Had you seen the show?
I had seen bits and pieces, but much like you, it was a bit of a take it or leave it kind of.
Right.
I didn't, certain. When I was that age, there were certain comedy series that I would, tape religiously, like every episode, and I'd have it all neatly on one VHS. Yeah. But this was a bit more. If I catch it, then it's fine. And plus, I didn't know. It was one of those things that just started turning up on late night TV, and I had no idea if it was starting from season 1, episode 1, or I think it first started coming over maybe in the form of like a best of clip shows and stuff, and Crush Your Little Head and stuff like that was on there, and so people got to know that. But I know some people really took to it, but for some reason it didn't. I didn't despise it or anything. It just. Much like you said, it never really.
I think it was much the same. I had friends that were sort of like religious about it. Like the kids in the hall were just revered.
Right.
But I was sort of a take it or leave it. But I didn't dislike it. But I sort of watched it when it was on. But at the same time, I could never speak badly about them because I would be sort of lynched for that, right? Idea, right?
So the five guys in question. And then you can mention
the other podcast that Clive and I often listen to is Mark Maron's podcast, WTF.
Right.
And actually, I've heard he's had 4 out of 5 of the kids on there. The most I had heard Scott Thompson a few months ago, but the most recent one that I heard was Bruce
McCullough.
Thank you, Bruce McCullough.
The others are Dave Foley, Kevin MacDonald, not Kevin Van Hendendrick, never mind what he looks like in this film.
He does look like
and Mark McKinney.
Mark McKinney, yes. So
right.
Mark McKinney is the only one who has yet to be on Mark Maron. So,
I see, okay.
So all the other, I haven't heard all 4 of them, but the one that I heard was Bruce McCullough.
Right.
And
this was the one that inspired you to rewatch.
Yes,
okay.
and he was actually talking about the movie Brain Candy, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that movie, and I remembered relatively enjoying it. My enjoyment of the show was sort of hit and miss, but I remember enjoying the movie when it first came out and having it be a bit of a thing with my friends and I.
You saw it in the theatre?
I can't remember.
Okay.
It's possible, but I can't remember if I did or not. But I do remember there being a bit of a scandal around it, and it's sort of almost effectively ending their careers. I wouldn't say ending, but definitely ending their film careers. Okay. And they did break up soon after, and I think they've had some reunion tours recently or something.
Right. Well, it's up to you, Ron, which way you want to do it, because I don't. You mentioned this when you said we'd do it, and I tried to keep my eyes out if I could spot what the scandal was. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Which way round do you want to do this? Do you want to go just into what the film's about first and then point out what the scandal is, or do you want to just jump in with the scandal? Would it make more sense?
I don't think the scandal is that relevant. I don't think it's just sort of like that was just the thing that was the talking point about why it was brought up and why.
Okay, go for it.
Which is was Cancer Boy.
Okay, that was the one. Yeah, so so it was
a bit of an eyebrow raiser, right?
In that case, then should we just outline the story for those who haven't seen, because then Cancer Boy makes more sense.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So the basic premise of the movie is some scientists create like a new happy drug, like a sort of a Prozac type thing, where
Gleeman-X,
and it's basically the story of the production, the development and production of this drug that is sort of rushed to production and sales.
They're pressured by the corporate board who need
the next drug, and so they kind of push it through without appropriate testing.
Yes.
And the point of the drug is it finds your happiest memory and kind of like locks it there, right, to keep you happy. But then the problem is that eventually it starts to backfire, where people are locked in that memory and can't get out and become sort of like these kind of like
statues,
basically, right? Can't move.
And also they make it non-prescription as well, right? So I can't be the only one while watching this now. I was just thinking Oxycontin. I thought, what a prescient story this. I mean, the ins and outs of the drugs are slightly different, but I thought, wow, this is kind of slightly ahead of its time.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I think it was actually. Yeah. So, and basically, it's just which is the basis of the show, the sketch show, which is that the 5 of them play every character,
right,
including all the women, right?
Yes. So they play multiple characters.
So all of them play multiple characters, including all the women. And there's a couple cameos with people who are not them, but it's very, very small and very irrelevant kind of section. But for the most part, it's just the 5 of them playing everything.
In a very Monty Python way.
Yes, very Monty Python, very kind of like broad humor-esque kind of idea. And so they play several different characters, and sort of interweaving many stories about how the people who end up using the drug. There's and there's different sort of subplots, and they all kind of weave together to connected by the thread of the drug.
Yeah, there's a not very closeted gay dad, right, who comes out to no one's surprise.
Exactly, as everyone's just waiting for him to come out, and he uses the drug, it makes him happy, and he realizes he's gay. And then there's
that kind of gothy, miserablest rock star who starts
the emo,
starts singing songs about rainbows and Happiness Pie, I believe. Yes.
And also I'm gay, right? That's the dad. And then there's an old lady who is sort of a little bit depressed. She's patient 0, and she's sort of like kind of depressed, and she becomes really happy, get locked in her memory of her kid being a really rude son, kind of visiting for 5 minutes, but it's happy, makes her happy. And then there's various other things, including this one Cancer Boy, whose name is literally Cancer Boy, and he's just like a kid with cancer.
Literally. Well, he's not even actually
played by Bruce McCullough, right?
Okay, but he's not even taking the drug, right? His parents are taking the drug to deal with having Cancer Boy. Just to paint the picture a bit. So he's kind of like I guess he's a parody of all those kind of feel good kind of
human drama.
He's like in his chair, and he's like, "Did you see me in the doctor?" It's funny when you see it. Actually, it is. I'd totally forgotten about it. And I was watching it, and I was, that's kind of
risque. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny. It's one of those things. It's not. I wouldn't say it's actually inappropriate or in. Well, it is in bad taste. It's deliberately in bad taste. But it's kind of. It's. We'll talk about whether we find the film funny or not later. But it's kind of. I don't know. It's slightly. There's nothing else quite that. Nasty is not the word, but it's the most difficult to defend thing in the film. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because it's just making fun of Cancer Boy, and he even has a hit pop song later on in the film. That was quite funny. Yeah. But it is an oddly kind of. It's the kind, and apparently they did try and I believe Paramount wanted to cut it out of the film.
So and it was also. The connection is also it's produced by Lorne Michaels, who produces Saturday Night Live, who also produced their TV show. We basically found them, so So Lorne Michaels has a connection between both shows.
I did notice the credit. I didn't realize he was on board from the beginning.
He basically was the one that found them and gave them the show in the first place. And back in the days when he would do lots of sketch comedy, and I believe Lorne Michaels is actually Canadian originally. So I believe I could be wrong.
Another one of. Mark Maron's obsessions is getting on guests to tell Lorne Michaels stories.
Yes.
Because I think he still hasn't quite got over the fact that he never landed the SNL gig.
Oh, did he? Yeah. I just listened to one today, and he was asking.
Yeah, he's talked about it a lot. Like whenever
Kyle Mooney about
what about Lorne? How did you get the job? I was like, and he'll tell the story again and again of how he didn't. Yeah,
Mark, we love you. Yeah, so if you're listening, you're not listening, but yes, definitely Lorne and Paramount and all of the studios all really wanted them to cut it, and for a while they did cut it, but, and so they were going to cut it, but then they got together and they decided, you know what, fuck it, we want to keep this in. This is. I think they felt like it was sort of like they were digging their heels in, or it was a principle. I don't really know the reasoning behind it.
Yeah,
but
it is one of
that
those
was
things.
The sticking point. Apparently, that was it. It was that character in that scene.
It is one of those things where I'm not entirely sure if that character went out the movie, I don't think it would make a hell of a lot of difference.
It would, but I think they sort of, because they were being almost bullied or pressured to get rid of it, they almost sort of like dug their heels in and said, well, this is what we're doing, I mean, this is us. And it was, I get the impression that it was sort of not because of the character they really wanted it. It was just sort of that they just didn't want to be told what to do.
Yes,
right? So,
I'm all in favour of artistic freedom, but
and
the older you get, you kind of sometimes start to see things from the other side,
exactly.
Right? People,
so,
and I could see,
maybe,
take that out.
And listen to Bruce McCullough talk about it, who like literally was a cancer boy and wrote that whole part. Right? He basically explained it that basically it was that scene that made the whole thing tank, right? So that basically Lorne and the Paramount had basically put it to them, saying like, you either cut it and the movies will be successful, or you leave it in and we give you nothing, right? So it's almost like they I don't know if it changed the marketing, or I don't know what it is, but basically they lost the backing or the support of the studio based on that.
So it did flop then?
I don't know if it necessarily flopped, but definitely it wasn't as big of a hit as they expected it to be or wanted it to be, I think, right?
I'm assuming at this, I mean, it had been like a couple of years since the end of the original show, so the show was still, because back in the mid-90s we didn't, change proper culture every 5 minutes like we do now, right? So it was still very much
in the zeitgeist.
And it was a proper, like it had gone from like a cult thing to a proper hit show.
Yeah, I mean, for Kids in the Hall, everyone knew Kids in the Hall. Everyone watched Kids in the Hall. Everyone was it was basically Canada's SNL, right? So So anyways, anyway, and then at the end to finish the summary, I guess of the movie is that at the end of the movie, the scientists get back together, and even the corporate people still want the drug to keep being made because it becomes very popular, and even outsells penicillin.
Yes.
Right? We beat penicillin.
Yes.
Right? And so they want it just to keep going, even though it's obviously basically destroying the entire population, turning everyone into statues, right?
It's made from monkey cum.
Made from monkey cum. And So then the scientists get together and they make an antidote at the end, and then which kind of unlocks people's unhappiest memory and makes people miserable again, and then they live happily or miserably ever after. Right. This is the idea, right?
So, was it funny?
I liked it. I thought it was very funny.
Okay.
Did you?
It's
so. Yeah.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
Now that I'm talking back about it, it seems funnier than it was at the time. Do you know, like some of the ideas now think, oh, that was quite a good idea. But I didn't really laugh much.
When I was thinking back about the movie when I watched it, 20 years ago, I couldn't remember if I thought it was funny or even if I enjoyed it or not. But as I was watching it, it was all coming back to me, and I actually had a couple good laughs in there.
Right.
So I thought it was quite. There was a couple that I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. And I don't know if I was laughing more out of like nostalgia or if I was laughing because I thought it was funny. But there was a couple of things I thought were quite clever and well. I
like the monkey cum taxi driver. He was quite funny.
The one person who never took the drug.
Cancer Boy got a little bit of it. Just I suppose more because it was quite shocking. Yeah, it's like okay, I didn't expect. It's the kind of thing I very much doubt that would make it through nowadays.
Oh yeah, I know. I almost certainly that would never go. The fact that it made through. I mean, it was already pressured 20 years ago, 23 years ago, and now it would just never fly.
It's funny though, the tone of
they would probably be totally strung up, for it kind of thing, especially on the internet.
So it wasn't so much the public reaction; it wasn't scandalous in that way. It was just more.
I mean, again, we didn't have the internet at that time, so I don't know what the public reaction was.
Right. Well, you did, but it took about a year to load a page.
Right.
I think. Not my problem. It's one of those things. A bit like Wet and Hot American Summer for me is I don't loathe it. I just didn't laugh that much. Okay. But the tone of the comedy is kind of interesting to me as well because it's on the one hand it's kind of low key, which I like, but then at the same time it has the kind of trappings of a more kind of hysterical, and men in drag and stuff, and some of the ways it plays with dramatic conventions and tropes, and it likes to do that kind of thing, like to undercut what would be the sentimental moment or something like that. So that to me, that's usually played slightly. It's a weird mix of kind of broad. And low key. It confuses me.
Definitely, the acting style is very broad, but
but not. But it's not a hysterical.
Not hysterical. So it's. But that I think that's their tone of the show as well. I mean, they've always been a little bit like that's just like them. That's just how they are all the time.
Do you remember? Because as is often the case, when a popular either sitcom or sketch show or something turns into a feature, almost invariably it's disappointing to the fan base, right? Do you remember, was this greeted as, this is just as good as a show, or it's them not on their best, or do you remember?
I mean, for myself, I was never that huge of a fan of the show, and I remember liking the movie better than the show. Okay. So,
but do you remember if
at least in my small group of friends, I remember everyone thinking the movie was quite good. It was favorably received, but I don't know if that was a general countrywide or worldwide thing, or if it's just my group of friends.
Right. So you got a few cameos as well, right? Brendan Fraser is in it. I have to admit, some kind of test subject with spots.
Right. Yeah. Like acne, basically.
Yeah. It's not the greatest cameo going, is it?
Yeah. But I think he was really big at that time. And
it was probably a coup to get him.
Get him. Yes. But he was probably a fan of them, I assume. I
didn't notice Janeane Garofalo.
Oh no, I didn't know she was in there either. Was
apparently in the IMDb listings, but then again, not in the IMDb listing. But I read in someone's review. They also mention, they say, and the first on-screen part for Selma Blair, apparently.
Oh, really?
But it's not on the IMDb, and I didn't spot it.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if that's an error.
Oh,
but
okay.
I did notice your favourite, Nicole Devoy, was in it.
Yes, who played the...
It's funny, I noticed straight away, I was like, oh,
hey.
But I couldn't quite place who it was.
Yes, exact same thing. When she's in the audience at the rock
putting
concert,
a cigarette out on her hand.
I was like, wait a second, she looks really familiar. Who is that? And then it was only later when she came back as like the groupie who was having sex with the scientist in the apartment. I was like, oh, right, it's Nicole Devoy. Right, that's right, yeah. So,
who had already starred in a film. She had the lead in Prom Night 4, Deliver Us from Evil.
Oh, okay.
Which I saw
what year was Cube again?
97, so the year after.
The year after, so right around this time. Maybe she was probably filming at this time or something.
Yeah.
So, Janeane Garofalo says it just woman at a party, so she's probably just someone in the crowd.
Right.
It's probably just like an extra.
But would that have been 96? Would she have? She would have been already a face, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
So maybe maybe she says like one thing to someone. And
maybe, I didn't realize that she was in it at all, so I didn't recognize her. Yeah, Reality Bites has been a couple of years before and stuff. So
directed by one Kelly Mackin, who I didn't know anything about, so I looked up, and also directed a Cynthia Rothrock vehicle called Tiger Claws a few years previous to this. I don't really have that much to say about it, to be honest. Is there anything you want to add, Ron? Was it what you were expecting? Did it either delight or disappoint, or was it just the same, or for you going back? Because you said nostalgia was part of the reason you wanted to see it, right?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of glad I revisited it. I enjoyed watching it again. A little bit interesting. One element that was kind of interesting is that one of the 5, Dave Foley, was the only one not to be given a writing credit.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was kind of interesting.
He's the guy who plays the kind of main corporate henchman.
Yes.
Right.
He's
well, to me, I don't know much about Kisses, but he's always been the one. He's the most visible one. Like I would say, oh, that's that guy from Kisses in the Hall.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's the same for everyone, but he seems to be the breakout.
I think he was the one that had most other stuff.
Yes, he was in Blast from the Past and stuff like that. Right?
News radios and other TV shows. Right. So, the thing was that there was a lot of because they sort of broken up right around this time, and actually he quit the group like during the filming of this movie because of sort of internal feuding. Apparently he didn't like the script and so that, and that was right at that time when they were filming this when he got cast in that show News Radio. And he only was in the movie because of contract, because he had to be. So actually he was like they all hated each other during the filming. So which is a little bit of a interesting behind the scenes thing. I think
have they made up?
Yes. It's made up, and they're back in like reunion tours and stuff like that. So, but
he seems to be. Maybe it's unfair to judge from this film, but he definitely seems to be the best overall like actor. Like the other guys, they do what they do, right? But I'm not sure how well they would fare. But he's actually quite a proper screen presence. Like he understands, what you look like on camera. He's really good at doing that. Just kind of really stoic, not give any emotions away, and he's quite good at doing that. I'm not sure what else he can do, but he just seems like the most like. Oh, he's a film star, if you see what I mean. I don't know what he's up to. I'm so out of touch. He could have the highest rated show on TV and I wouldn't know. But I haven't seen him for a long while in anything. But that's just because of maybe what I watch. Is he still kind of an ongoing?
I think he does.
Relevant.
I think he still does stuff. He sort of does a lot of those, probably like cameos and sort of. Yeah, I think he does a lot of writing and directing or something like that. I think he does a lot of like TV work.
I've noticed a lot of these kind of of this generation of kind of SNL or SCTV or people like that. They a lot of them go on to make a living doing voice work.
Voice work and just sort of just sort of cameos and sort of like
Right.
collaborations with other people, and that guy, Dave Filoni from Kids in the Hall, please come on my show. It's like a boon for them, or like kind of a windfall to get something with the Kids in the Hall, right? So,
how about the other? So, like you said, they fell out, but they made up. And I know there's been like a few one-off specials here and there, but it doesn't seem like a long-term sustainable thing anymore. So
I don't think so.
What are they doing now? Are they performing together?
I think they all have their own stuff going
Okay.
on. I think I can't speak for them. I'm not sure exactly, but I think they all have their own stuff. But I mean, Bruce McCullough in his interview, but the interview was from like April or much earlier this year. So he was talking about how I think they were planning another reunion tour, maybe, or they have a couple shows here and there. I think they it's sort of like the Spice Girls. They get together when they need to, when they need some more money or something. Probably.
Right. Would they be like faces that that would occasionally pop up on like Canadian like talk shows or like breakfast shows or something, like someone might
possibly, I don't know. I haven't been in Canada for a long time, but it's quite possible. Yeah, they would. Right. I don't know if they would be like hosts or things like that, but certainly as guests. Probably. So that. The other interesting thing is that the head of the drug company, the Mark McKinney's character, it was actually based on Lorne Michaels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if
he has that kind of way of speaking as well, right?
It's supposed to be, so it actually is supposed to be Lorne Michaels.
I wonder if how Lorne Michaels felt about it.
Well, I think it was probably, Lorne Michaels was the producer, so I'm sure he had something to do. And then also Mark McKinney, after finishing Kids in the Hall, actually joined Saturday Night Live. He was the only Kids in the Hall to join Saturday Night Live, so I assume he had a fairly good relationship with Lorne, enough to allow them to do that, right? So
it's even though I didn't find it laugh about the room funny, I didn't think about it too carefully, but I was just going through like the list of, I suppose you could put this in the category with other SNL and SCTV spin-off features.
Right.
It's probably, well, it's far from the worst, right? Because they've been responsible for a lot of bad movies over the years, like SNL.
Yeah.
So I'd say,
but some good ones too.
Less so, but a handful of good. This is kind of somewhere in the middle. Do you think?
I wouldn't call this an SNL.
But
movie, but
it's
in the same genre.
And you have Lorne Michaels, just that kind of powerhouse of.
But I think going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, it was almost as if it was, as a Canadian, you're almost not allowed to say that you don't like it. Okay. You know what I mean? It's sort of like you have to
say it.
But honestly, I did not like it.
His fingers are crossed.
I actually enjoyed watching it again. I was kind of glad that I gave myself an opportunity to revisit it, because I don't think I would have otherwise.
Right.
And it was nice to watch it. I was like, I remember why I used to like this. It was, and I enjoyed a lot of the other bits that I had forgotten about. I re-enjoyed as well.
Right,
so
but you probably wouldn't watch it again and again and again and again.
Not over and over and over again. I'd watch it again if it was on
in a few years.
In a few years, if I saw it. But it's not like an every month kind of watch for me, I don't think. But I'd watch it again. So if I needed to. So. And yourself?
No, I think I'm done.
You're done. Yeah.
But again, it's not out of a hate or loathing. It's just I guess not my thing. But I have to admit, it wasn't too painful to watch, especially since it was like you 20 years ago or something. I'd seen it last.
Right.
If I had just seen it last month and you just said we're doing Brain Candy, I would have said fuck you, Ron. I don't want to watch again so soon,
Right.
But after 20 years, it could have been much. It could have been Twin Falls, Idaho. Right? So
or International Gorillas.
No, that's a good film, Ron. So anyway.
So you're all right. So moving on to your companion piece.
Yes. So my companion piece, which was I looked, because I couldn't remember anything about Kids in the Hall Brain Candy, so I looked at the plot synopsis, and then I was and then so I came up with, I think, something thematically linked, but also along the same lines. It was a very interesting piece of nostalgia for me, because I remember seeing this when it was quite new, and it was quite quite an important film for me when I first saw it.
Okay.
So I chose, well, what are we going to call this?
Yes.
On the English subtitled DVD cover, it's titled Splatter Naked Blood, right?
Okay.
But the
Splatter colon naked blood.
yes, not
an actual colon, but the colon.
no. Although it would be apt.
The punctuation.
But then the on-screen title is Naked Blood in English, and then Megyaku in kanji, right? So Naked Blood is probably the best.
But then also the file that we used, that we completely legally used, actually was called Painkiller.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, which was a totally different title. But to be honest, I think that was a much better title than Naked Blood.
Yeah, actually,
Painkiller actually
pretty good.
Actually is the much better title.
It's better than Naked Blood.
Yeah, because Naked Blood doesn't mean anything, but Painkiller actually is a very appropriate title. I thought.
I think the problem is this is a problem if you're a fan of Japanese genre films, especially. What's happened over the years is something will come out in Japan, and it'll have a Japanese title, and then before anyone releases it legitimately, there's some kind of online fan version with fan subtitles, and they've given it their own English title, which is sometimes an accurate translation, sometimes isn't. And nowadays, of course, that journey from new release in Japan to legit release is shorter, right? But back in the day, that would take a few years. So along the way, things would kind of garner these bootleg made-up titles, basically, which they'd be traded with. And then that's how you'd refer to it. So if you refer to it by its actual title, people would be, I don't know what that is. But if Painkiller, yeah, I know. So I'm guessing that's where Painkiller
maybe
came from. I think so this is a 1995 Japanese movie, directed by Hisayasu Sato and written by Taketoshi Watari. First watch for you, Ron? Yep. Okay. And so so I chose this thematically first of all. So because the plot is not too complicated, really, is it? Mm-hmm. There's So we'll just go through the main beats, the ones that connect it to, because it's about an experimental drug, right?
Right.
So there's I don't know how old he's supposed to be. I know the actor was actually in his mid-20s.
He's supposed to be 17.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one line that said.
Okay.
Because my wife and I were watching it, we were like, "How old is he supposed to be?" And there's actually one part that said that she's 17.
That's what I was going to be. I'm quite mentioning. So your wife must have been really surprised by the casting of the main guy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
She's like, "Oh yeah, he's very, very famous now."
I hadn't seen this film, and I was shocked. As soon as he came on, I said, "Is that fucking Abe Sadao?" And I looked it up, and it is. It's Abe Sadao, right? And he's huge now, right? Like he's massive. So she was quite surprised, I would imagine, that he was in this film. So he plays the son of some kind of doctor, I guess, a female doctor who's running contraceptive experiments, I think she mentions, on 3 women, right? There's 3 women and they've been given some experimental drug. Meanwhile, the son has developed his own ultimate painkiller called My Son, right? Which is, I guess, supposed to something to do with the endorphins that are released when you're in pain to turn pain into pleasure, basically, right? So this is my connection with brain candy, right? Somewhat similar
kind of drugs to make people happy.
Yes, which goes wrong.
Goes awry.
Yes. Certainly does.
As some people say, awry.
Yes, those people who can't talk. So the way things go, awry, is so basically, if pain is pleasure, then two of the test subjects, the one played by Miki Kirihara is a very kind of vain woman, isn't she? She says like, I'd rather die of starvation than be fat and unattractive or something. and the Abe Sadawa's character is supposed to be monitoring. Because sorry, I'm fucking this up. He slips his my son drug, into his mother's experimental stuff, whatever she's doing. He slips his no. Okay, fuck
Hot
it, yeah,
dog.
penis. Why not? Let's make the rest of the film. So he slips his experimental serum into this, and then the idea is that he's supposed to follow them around with a video camera, right? Which strikes me as a not very experimental way to.
Well, I think the idea is that he needed his experimental subjects, and he has to observe his subjects.
Yes.
But he doesn't have permission to have them as subjects, so he's doing it secretly, so he's going to also secretly observe them, right?
Yes, but it's a very kind of... it just struck me watching it this time how ridiculous it is, because he's basically like 2 or 3 blocks away on the roof of a
across the
building,
street on the roof with a video...
with a very long lens.
With a huge handy cam. Right?
Yes, and he can just see them maybe through the window doing something.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to get much data.
Well, yes, I think so.
Anyway, so this extremely vain woman, this kind of the change manifests itself in her is that she suddenly starts piercing herself. Right? She starts by piercing her ear and starts by piercing other bits of her body, and then turns out she just can't stop cutting herself and poking things through herself because it just feels extremely orgasmic and pleasurable, I guess. Right? But her story, I think, is probably not the most interesting one. The most interesting of the 3 girls is the one played by Mika Hayashi, who is a very busy pink movie actress. So I did recognise that she was the only other one apart from the main guy that I recognised. And
is she still in AV movies?
I think she might still be not in AVs in Pink. I don't think she ever did AV. She's softcore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she's kind of a bit of a glutton, right? Her thing is food. She loves to eat. So she's at home and she's preparing some tempura, and I guess the drug kicks in. So what happens to her, Ron? What does she do?
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Well, of course she is boiling oil that she's grease that she's using to deep fry all her food, and then decides to put her hand in the deep fryer and use a tempura hand. I guess, right?
And it's covered in the breadcrumb sauce.
Yeah, so it comes out, and then she begins to eat her hand.
Yes.
And little by little she begins to, not a little bit, a lot by lot, she begins to eat herself.
Yes.
Including her hand, first her hand, and then bits other parts of her body, and then
she slices off her vagina lips, I believe.
Takes off her vagina and
a
nipple, and then takes out her eye and eats her eye. And,
she rams the fork into her eyeball, right, and pulls it out to the root,
right, and then eats it.
It almost looks like jumbo shrimp.
Right.
Yeah.
I was curious what the producer or the director had made all that stuff out of that vegetable.
It's not like it's not going to win any. It's slightly hokey and fake, but it's not bad as practical effects go.
Right,
It's pretty good. It's good enough to get the shock. Yeah. It's much more effective than anything CGI would be. Right. And the third girl, played by Misa Aika, also the star of Where the Woman Returns, she doesn't seem to be massively affected by this drug, right? And also she can't sleep due to apparently a trauma.
Not because of the drug, but this is before this.
Yes. She had a trauma when she started menstruating. I didn't quite understand.
That it was so shocking for her that now she's an insomniac and can't sleep because of her period.
Yes.
And at that point, I just wanted to say that my wife actually turned to me and goes, "Is that a real thing?" And I said, "Why
did she do it in a Brooklyn accent?"
My wife is a Japanese Brooklynite, and she. And I said to her, I was like, "Well, wouldn't you know more than me? I mean, I wouldn't know." So I'm pretty sure it's not, but I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I would wager that it probably isn't as well.
It is not. Yeah.
But as the young guy's following her around, very conspicuously with his big old video camera shoved in her face.
Yep.
And they quite unlikely form a friendship, like a relationship.
But you also missed the most important part, which is that so in order to because she can't sleep, she has this...
I was getting to that, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought you had skipped it.
No, no, how could I miss...
But this is before they got together, so you're jumping around.
But she introduces him to her, what the thing she loves most in the world, right? Because they bond over this kind of slightly weird, hey, you're a fucking idiot, yeah, you are too. And it's like, oh, how charming this little weirdo.
It's sort of like the freaks getting together, freaks fighting each other,
but
right?
it's... I've seen that done kind of better. It's not really very... It's basically this...
I don't think you should
nerdy little guy with a poking, and within 5 minutes she's like, oh, he's quite the charmer, isn't he? Anyway, no, you're quite right. I am overthinking it.
Yeah.
And she introduces him to the thing. First they go, what's the place you hate the most? And they go to like a field full of flowers and trees. And he's like, well, why do you hate this place? It seems so peaceful. And for her, she's saying, no, it's so noisy and loud. Right? I'm assuming she's very empathic to
hear the plants.
Yeah. But in her room, which doesn't seem to have anything else in it, it's a very kind of spare apartment she has.
A chair.
Like a
lazy boy.
Yeah, was it like a massage chair or
something like that? Yeah,
and a big fuck off cactus in front of the chair.
Yeah.
Oh, and she has a lamp for it, doesn't she?
Right. Yeah, like a heat lamp, whatever.
Yeah, and the cactus is now. It's anybody's guess, but when I first...
like a fuck off cactus.
It's a big fuck off cactus. When I first wrote about this, and I'm not sure if I got this from the slightly different subtitles from the original, which I'll talk about later, or if it was just my guess, but I dubbed it a VR cactus, and that seems kind of fair, right? It seems to have like one of those old like virtual reality.
Oh yeah. So my understanding was that in order that she can't sleep, she's an insomniac, but she has like a machine that she uses, which sort of simulates sleep for her brain, or gives her the same relief for her brain that sleep gives to normal people.
Right.
And in order to that, it's a VR machine that she's got to put over her eyes that has some sort of flashing light.
Yes.
And
then it goes through...
But it's connected...
to the cactus
somehow. To the cactus.
Yeah, through a bunch of different devices.
So she has the exact same set of goggles that she puts onto the cactus.
Yeah.
So I assumed it was something to do with she was getting something from the cactus through the machine giving to herself.
Right.
Or if it's just that she was sharing the experience with the cactus. And she said she loves the cactus the most because the cacti don't speak.
Right.
Or I guess is the idea. So
it's bollocks is what it is. Right?
Well, it's just
but it's an odd conceit.
Yeah, it's definitely
kind of interesting.
It was an interesting kind of unique kind of thing with like her with this kind of laying on her massage chair with this VR virtual reality goggles on, connected to a cactus also wearing.
Yes, and then she goes to some place like a dream state or something where she realizes. It's interesting. I can already sense it's interesting. I think we're approaching this from because this is the first time you've seen this. I think so. There may be certain elements that are kind of that's different or interesting, whereas I'm coming from the other end of expecting it to be more interesting than it was, and
I don't know that that's very true.
Okay,
but I did think that
we'll get to it.
It was an interesting idea or a visual.
Yes,
but
it's something you haven't seen before.
But I certainly wanted something more to happen with it. I was expecting there to be a payoff, which there wasn't. So.
Not really, no. Yeah. It's a shame, actually. This version, the now official version with new subtitles, doesn't have my old favourite subtitle from when I originally saw it, which was "Empty your mind, trust the cactus," which I always quite liked.
Well, and I did say did want to mention this little analogy, or not analogy. What am I thinking? Story. Penis, that's right. Yeah, a small penis. So Clive has a
a small analogy.
So while we're watching the movie, it's got this, connected to the VR goggles and the cactus and stuff like that. And I turned to my wife and I said, I'll bet you $10 she has sex with the cactus.
Okay.
And I was wrong, and I think that actually would have been a much better payoff if she had, in the idea of when the drug kicks in, wanting pain.
I see.
Having sex with the cactus would have been. So I thought that's where I expected the payoff to go, but it didn't go. So and the cactus ultimately just didn't really seem to mean anything, right? So
just to finish up the bits of business in terms of so they end up having a relationship, and they do end up having sex while both wearing VR glasses and doing this weird spinning around
that was
in
just
cyberspace.
The camera,
dreamscape.
And also, I kept saying it must be difficult to kiss with. They kept kissing each other, but they had to turn their head completely 180 degrees in order to kiss because these goggles were in the way. And they kept going back and forth. It's really...
And spoilers, it turns out that she's a bit of a psychopath. Whether this is a result of the drug or not, I'm not sure.
It's not clear.
So not only does she finish off her fellow test subjects, she's slashes them, which to be honest seems like it might be a bit of a mercy killing more than anything else. Even though they are kind of enjoying, you're wondering if she's just not putting them out of misery to a certain extent, or putting them out of their pleasure. I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, but also the mother ends up dead.
Right.
And we're not quite
sure why or how. Yeah.
And she has her abdomen split open.
Fully split open and pulled open.
And then there's this kind of distant figure of the boy's father, the female doctor's husband. And we have a flashback as well where he sees something glinting out at sea when they're on the beach and she's pregnant, and he just walks out into the sea and never comes back.
And then disappears.
Yeah.
He actually literally fades into nothingness.
And then he turns up at the end, and I don't know whose dream sequence this is, because I'm assuming the doctor would be dead because her abdomen is split as a big hole.
Yeah.
He turns up and he crawls inside her, back
and then
to
closes it back up, and then it comes out of it, and she's completely
there's nothing there. So I don't know who that belongs to.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's quite a memorable image.
I think that's what it was. It was this is a very memorable, interesting idea, but I think it wasn't linked or connected to anything. They just wanted to use the idea but not actually figure out how it fits in the story.
Yes, and we'll talk about when we finish up here, we'll talk about the kind of interesting versus pretentious versus that whole axis, right? Because anyway, but then the very last coda is I guess, from the beginning it's a 95 film, and he's writing in his diary it's 1997, so it's already near future, I guess. But then we go a little bit further into the future, I guess, at the end, and the Misa Aika's character is with a child who I assume is the main guy's child,
kid,
and it's sometime in the future. She kills him as well.
Yeah, after they have sex once, she slashes his throat.
He seems quite pleased with that. I guess.
They both had taken the drug, I guess, right? So I guess So he doesn't really seem. That's what I was waiting for him to go but it was just sort of. How's
it going to go?
But
you got to see this.
But I expected there to be pleasure in his kind of writhing from having his throat slashed, but he was just sort of dying like a normal death. So
pretty much,
So.
But anyway, so in this future, she has a son, and they seem to be out in some desert.
It's a sort of. It seems to me sort of like a Mad Max, post-apocalyptic kind of feel. That's what I got.
Yeah, it's interesting though. This is one thing versus my original viewing in now, because I think when I originally first saw it, I wouldn't have known any better. I'd never been to Japan, so I thought, I think they might have filmed this bit, abroad, or they went to the States or something like that. Right? But then clearly, they must have planted that cactus in a particularly sandy area, because then she.
But it's the same cactus, right?
Yeah, and then she goes off on her motorbike, and then it's the unmistakable.
Yeah, you can see the cars in the background. Yeah,
well, red and white electric pylons that you get here in Japan. It's clearly Japan. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere in Japan. It's interesting. I never would have picked up on that on my original viewing.
Well, I mean, this is my interpretation of the ending, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or what you think.
Let me just say what she says then. She says, and she's to her son. She says, we'll go west, because it hasn't reached there yet.
Right.
And I suppose we're led to believe some kind of virus or contamination.
But then
and then she goes off on her bike into the distance. That's the end of the film.
But you also have to notice about her bike is that she's also spraying something behind her. Right?
Yes, she is. Yes,
she's got this sort of like canister of something that is actually sprayed, almost like pesticide, as she's like driving off. And so my understanding, considering that she basically turned into a psycho killer at the end, is that she's taken this drug and is basically infecting everybody in the world with it, so that they all want to kill or be killed. And then basically, so that's the idea, is it hasn't been infected yet, so that she's spraying everything by riding on a motorcycle and infecting everyone with this drug to make them, to kill the world.
So even like the plant life and stuff as well?
Well, I think leaving only the plants left, because the plants wouldn't be killed. Is that?
Well, no, but she's just spraying it on the ground.
Well, that's why it didn't really make any sense. And then so that's why I thought it was like a Mad Max thing. Is that it was supposed to be in the future where she had sort of used the drug to infect everyone, and there was like no one left, and that's why she had to go west, because there's still people over there to infect. But then she drives off, and there's like a whole interstate of just like cars walking. I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? So I don't know if it was just a mistake or if I just misunderstood or.
I think with a lot of this film, I think it's kind of what they could get away with on the budget or whatever, right? So,
but do you think I was wrong, or did you have a different opinion of what happened? Or
no, I would say that's as good a guess as any.
Did you have a similar guess or a different guess
along those lines? Or I just.
Or you just sort of like, I don't know what that means. Forget it.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. Your interpretation is interesting, though. I mean, it's as good as anything I.
The only reason why she would be spraying that stuff is but the thing was that they did say before she kills the boy that they had used the last of the drug. So I was like, well, where did she get the rest of the drug? Unless she used his notes or something and remade it, or
something to do with a cactus.
Yeah.
Is the cactus now the well for that,
or it's something to do with the cactus has been speaking to her through the VR machine, is actually in control. I don't know. Like, that's why I wanted more of a payoff for the cactus. Like, why the fuck does the cactus wear the VR machine? I don't get it. So
it's actually this actually isn't going to help, but just to mention it, this is actually a kind of remake of an earlier film that the director had made.
Okay.
In 1987 called Boko Homban, which I guess translates as real rape or genuine rape. But I think you can also find it like bootlegs with fan subtitles under the title Pleasure Kill. And I have seen this film, but I remember almost nothing about it. I think, if I remember correctly, it has the same basic premise of the female doctor running an experiment and the son putting his serum in. But then I don't think there's any of the gore stuff. I think it goes off more in a sex direction, because I'll speak a little bit more about the director in a bit, but that would make more sense because he's primarily a sex movie director. But before I get into little details like that, I'm kind of really curious what you made of this film, Ron, and what your wife made of it as well, actually.
Well, speaking of my wife, after watching Harakiri last week, you had gained some points.
I tricked her into thinking we...
and so she was actually like, whoa. So and I was like, well, Clive picked another Japanese movie. You want to try it this time? Okay, sure. And you're back in her shit list. So,
right.
She did not enjoy that movie at all.
No.
I said, well, did you enjoy it? She was like, what? Like, she couldn't even believe I even asked her.
The strong Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, exactly. And we also made the mistake. We were watching it while eating lunch.
Oh,
and so
I thought for a minute you were going to say you watched it with your kids.
No. We started watching it right when we were the scene where she starts eating herself and cutting off her nipple is right. My wife was actually eating like that's it. She was we basically had to turn it off until she finished lunch because we couldn't.
Oh, okay. She's a bit squeamish about it.
Well, she couldn't do it together. So, but
can't wait to meet your wife again.
Well, so for myself, I thought there were some interesting ideas here at the beginning. It was, very low budget, obviously, very like kind of and the kind of crap, not that good of a script and not that good of actors, but
Right.
but it was an interesting premise, at least an interesting
Right.
idea. But then it just really fell apart at the end. Like I just think that they just, I think right up until at first we couldn't really understand why each of them had a different way of dealing with the drug. Like why one was piercing herself, one was eating herself. I was like, well, the other ones weren't eating themselves. But I get what you're saying about
Right.
like that was their sort of vice.
Yes.
Sort of playing
Yeah.
off of the too full of themselves, or But
I'm guessing that's what they started with, right?
Yeah,
When
I guess,
they then wrote it back.
exactly.
From there.
I mean, you can tell that exactly. That sort of like, oh, this idea of someone eating themselves is like, oh, and they definitely wrote a movie around that, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Once it started getting into, and then it's like, well, why did she become a killer? And I guess it makes sense. Maybe her proclivity was towards murder, or the fact that she was insomniac made her a little bit insane, and then sort of the drug, exacerbated it, or
I don't know. To
amplified
be honest,
it.
I think that whole thing with her character is just aggregated bullshit, right?
Yeah,
it's like one obtuse thing on top of
it's
another,
just-
and then hoping it kind of
works
hangs together.
So,
and it doesn't really.
Yeah, definitely. It sort of, as I said, just falls apart at the end. Kind of
Right.
But it was. I mean, I had some interesting ideas. I mean, I was never bored. That's for sure.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
But
it's a very short and under 80
it's very
minutes.
short. Yeah, it's nice to have a short film from you. Thank you. Finally,
You're welcome.
It's not your 4-hour, opuses. But overall, I can't say I liked it, but I can see why you chose it.
Yes,
thematically.
Well, it's interesting.
As a reaction, and
yes,
it was interesting to watch at least.
It's a companion piece of sorts, isn't it? But it also, for me, it was kind of quite illuminating to how I've changed over the years. Because, as I mentioned, I first saw this. It must have been 98, 99, something like that, and it was a bootleg cassette. And the DVD looks pretty much as I remember it, because I'm assuming it must have been shot on, it's either shot on video or like 16mm, but on really crappy stock, right? So I don't think there's any way, even if you went back to the elements,
you can't remaster it.
No, I don't think I don't think you're going to see like a Blu-ray 4K version of this.
I'm sure you would,
because it's going to look like this, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but it was just an interesting element. And so I remember seeing. I think it must have. It was one of those. Do you remember Video Search of Miami? Video Search of Miami was this out. I think actually they might still exist. Out of Florida, led by this guy called Thomas Weiss. Who was like a journalist about all sorts of different cult film stuff, but primarily he was known for like Asian and Japanese stuff. But that's another show there. But it turns out he's like a terrible plagiarist and just makes shit up that aren't actually in the films. The number of films I've seen where he's written that something's in it and it's just not in it. And because I think what he wrote a couple of books, the Japanese encyclopedia of film books, and there's like a one horror one and there's a sex one. There's another one of those, just multi-genre, but a bunch of these books. And I think his MO is basically writing reviews based on films that he hasn't actually seen.
Okay.
Which he's got the information from translations of reviews written in Japanese of the films when they were originally released in Japan.
Okay.
Which sounds like a very complicated, kind of difficult process to go through, but I think this is what he must have done. Yeah. So he wrote about.
It seems like it'd be easier than watching the movie. It is rather than finding a copy and watching it, he just finds another review and translates it. And
which wouldn't be a problem, but the thing is, he didn't own up to it, or he didn't put that out front and center, right? So he just puts it out there as, I watched this movie and this is what I think.
How can you tell that he did that?
Well, he's notorious for it for a start. I'd heard rumours, but then my first-hand experience of when I first came to Japan and I'd track down films based on his reviews, and I'd watch them, and they'd be entirely different to how he said they were. So I think what had happened is there's so many ways things get lost in translation from Japanese to English, right? So I think it's just, a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. Exactly. And then he ends up writing something in his kind of cocky, confident, I saw this style, and it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting character in so much as he's notorious for this practice, but at the same time, his books are still kind of invaluable because it's the only place in English where you will read about a lot of these films. So I still use his books almost daily, especially the sex movies book, because a lot of that stuff is still unavailable outside of Japan, right? But you can't trust. You have to double check everything yourself. You can't rely on. Anyway, he ran this label called Video Search in Miami as well, which was like a grey market bootleg dealer that would sell English.
And this is the director of this movie?
No, sorry. This is the guy who runs the company.
Oh, I see, okay.
Video Search of Miami, which is how I first saw this movie.
Okay.
So he had these overpriced kind of bootleg versions, and people working for him had made English subtitles for them. Not only Japanese movies from all over the world, right? And I think I must have got a copy of. That's how I first. And he had his own original subtitles, which is why they differ from and the ones now are probably more reliable, to be honest. So, and when I first saw this movie, I thought I was really in my kind of late teens, kind of wanting to see the most extreme gore, shit like that.
This definitely seems like something I would have enjoyed a lot as a teenager or young, early 20s. Sort of like hey, have you seen this sort of, hey, have you seen this, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, wait till you see this.
Yeah.
There's a woman who shoves a fork in her eye. And
definitely it feels like that. It was like early in the mid-90s kind of thing. But,
so, and that is, I think, still its reputation, right? Like, I think now the whoever did put it out on DVD eventually a part of like some kind of Tokyo Shock collection or that kind of, when Japanese films were notorious for really amping up the kind of gore and violence and all these kind of cult things like Ichi the Killer and stuff like that, right? So I think, but what I found interesting about it at the time, I thought, the gore thing is there, and I knew it was coming and I'd seen it before. What did you make of the impact of the gore scenes? Did you think they were still impactful, or did they seem somewhat dated?
They're sort of impactful. They're a little gratuitous, I thought.
Yes. Without a doubt. Deliberately.
I wouldn't say that they were dated. I think they still look pretty good, especially for considering practical effects. And I thought they're in a low budget. I thought obviously this is where the entire budget had gone.
Right. Yes.
And they were believable, and it was enjoyable to watch. Yeah.
Do you think they would shock and disturb a casual viewer who
shocked and disturbed my wife? So yes.
She did find it quite.
I think so. That she was like couldn't even
wincing.
Wincing, couldn't look at the screen and stuff.
So it still does have that.
Because
I was
made
wondering.
Her stop eating her lunch, right? So I mean,
Because I was wondering about that because I was kind of psyched for it, I suppose, and of course they worked fine. I didn't think you could see the strings or anything like that, but it was just, I don't know. I suppose they played more as, especially with the slightly too loud sound effects. They play more blackly comic, but that says more me again.
I was just looking at like a low budget movies from the 90s. I mean, it was I mean the sound was not particularly good anyway. Never mind how loud the sound. As I just thought the sound, it was just sort of part of the soundtrack that it was like I wouldn't say it was too loud or too quiet. It was just the sound was 90s and shitty and filmed on video.
well, that's what I mean as well when I was saying about why I thought we were coming from slightly different. It's not that I think you think it's better than I think or something like that. It's just you're coming at from a point of view just didn't expect anything. So I think you're maybe accentuating the positives. I was like, that was pretty good, and that was pretty good as well. Was I held this film in quite high esteem for quite a long time. So watching it now, it was a little bit like
disappointing. So.
But
I think it goes back with that the theme we had a few weeks ago, which is like movies we used to love and now we hate.
I don't hate it, but it was just not so much disappointment.
Don't hold up
in the film, but more disappointment in me. Like wow, I'd swallow any old crap back in the... What I mean is some of the more kind of the kind of pretension level of it was but I have to admit it didn't actually annoy me that much. It wasn't like annoyingly pretentious, but some of it, like when they were having that one sex scene spinning around and you're just like, you know, it's just like it's a bunch of kind of interesting images and ideas, but there's no real center to it, right? Whereas once upon a time I thought, it's funny. My line was, which is true to a certain extent, is Hisashi Sato's films in general, and this one in particular, I thought it's kind of like in the Cronenberg vein a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
but
I can tell that.
But it's not quite. It's not quite up to that standard, really.
But I can see the links between him and Cronenberg and those types of things. Yeah. So.
But the other thing, this will be slightly less interesting to you, I think. So I'll keep it short. But this director, Hisashi Sato, he's still making films. Shut up. But he made most of his films between like 1985 and here. That was like 50 films. He was fairly prolific.
Wow.
And he'd made a bunch of them. But what surprised me about this, going back to it, was he's known as a pink film director. So almost all of his films are sex films in some way or another. But they often do have kinks or kind of gore or violence or kind of really depressing, nihilistic kind of subject matter. Some of them are quite interesting, some of them less so. But because I'd seen this maybe first of all his films that I've ever seen, I always assumed it was another pink film, but with added gore and violence. I was surprised to learn about halfway through this film. I'm thinking, there's no sex in this film, and there pretty much isn't. There's like that one
just at the end
sex scene, which isn't really. I mean, it is a sex scene of people having sex, but it's not filmed in a way to accentuate the sex. Right? It's just they happen to be having sex, right? And so I'm thinking this must be like one of the few handful of films in all of his 50, 60 films that is not a sex film. So it's kind of a bit of an aberration in his filmography. Even though if you watch the other films from around this time he made, they're almost thematically exactly the same. They kind of look the same. They have the same obsessions with screens and video cameras and voyeurism and stuff. But it's as if someone's just kind of snipped the sex out.
Did he write this one?
No, he didn't write it.
So it sounds like, does he write the other ones?
Not. I think he co-writes and he gets other writers. He doesn't always write his own stuff, so it's not just.
It might have been just that someone else brought him a script and said, "Hey, please do this."
Well, it was the same. It was the same writer who wrote the earlier Boko Honban film, which is the remake of, and that was a sex film.
Yeah.
So it's an odd one, and it has that same. I know you haven't. I don't think you've seen any of those films, but it has that exactly same kind of vibe, the voyeur. As someone who hasn't seen his other films, did you pick up on that kind of very, like a clinically voyeuristic kind of sleazy sex film?
Yeah, I got that a little bit with the camera, like him holding the camera across the street, that kind of stuff. Like I got the impression that he sort of had a proclivity towards sex or kinky stuff, and definitely the spinning, sex scene at the end kind of. It seemed like it was in the director's wheelhouse, that part of that section.
And I think maybe the problem
section
with it, like what you did there, is that I think the main problem with it is that it's not a sex film. I have no idea why this film was made whether that was his choice or someone said, "Hey, do you want to make a straight kind of, well, not really straight, but do you want to make a horror film or whatever?" But for some reason, I think the reason it might not work is, and not all of his films, you make 50 films in 10 years, not all of them are going to be great, right? But some of his like really kind of, there's one called Lolita Vibrator Torture, or at least that's the bootleg title. And that's a nasty piece of, that's really, you don't want to be watching that one with your wife. It's kind of, take out the extreme gore of this and replace it with rape and explicit sex, and it's really nasty. But for what it is, it's really good because that's what he does well, if you see what I mean. So I think maybe the problem with this film is it's lacking what he really is interested in, possibly.
Right. I do have to say that you were absolutely right, and that was really boring.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
I hope you were really bored too, listeners. That's about all I have to say about this one.
Right. Do you have any thoughts about the title? Why Naked Blood? I think it's just sort of like sex and gore, words of sex and words of gore kind of strung together.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the Megyaku means either. I recognized some of the kanji, but I didn't recognize them in relation to each other.
I didn't ask my wife what it meant. So
I don't think it's a.
Did your wife watch this?
Not this time. I think she saw it back in the day with me. Okay. I think it's I don't think it's a common usage. Okay. It's like one of those words someone might, I don't know, and they'd have to look it up. Right. And often Hisashi Sato's films seem to have another kind of pretentious thing is almost all of his films have like an official release title and then the director's title. So these aren't, I'm making them up, but they're not that different from something along these lines. Like the commercial title will be virgins raped up the ass in school, and then the director's title will be like The Solitude of Butterflies, or that kind of thing. Almost all his films have this kind of director's title plus commercial title.
Right.
If I'd have looked it up, I could have
more pretentious.
I could have come up with a real example, but they're really not that far off.
I see.
Yeah.
Also, that part was really boring as well.
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm on fire, or whatever the opposite is. I'm wet. I'm wet for Europe.
Right. Yeah. Get a cactus.
Right. Suppose we better stop before this gets out of hand, Ron. Is that all?
Yeah, I think
business
that's good.
done?
Yeah, that's good. So it's Brain Candy and Naked Blood, another two movies which I'm sure no one in the entire world in the history of time have ever paired.
No.
Yeah. So hey, congratulations.
I think we're on a roll here.
We're on a roll
we found our niche
of pairing movies of absolute, very very thin threads of tissue.
Yeah.
So. All right, well.
Right, let's go then.
Much. So until next time.
Empty your mind, trust the cactus.
Yeah.